In this video, we're going to be replacing some of the turn signal and running light brackets on an RS5 series scooter from Roadrunner. Hey guys, it's Steve from Scooter King, and in this video, we're going to be swapping out the running light and turn signal brackets on an RS5 series scooter. Now, all of the RS5, so the Max, the Pro, the 5, they all use the same basic cosmetic design, and thankfully these are pretty easy and straightforward to swap out. Roadrunner makes this almost a plug-and-play kind of setup, so it's not terribly difficult to do. And for those who have been following the channel, you know that several weeks ago we were hit in a bike lane and we really tore up a couple of these on one side, and then the rear one on the other side. So it got pretty beat up, busted the front light, and broke a couple of the front brackets that adhere these. But thankfully, they're super easy to swap out, and it's pretty quick and dirty, and they're fairly, affordable. So I'll leave that information on the links below so you guys can check that out if you ever do need to. If you lay it down, you're probably going to scuff them up, and it's a pretty easy swap. So let's dive in and find out what's involved in swapping the running light and the brake light brackets out on an RS5 series scooter from Roadrunner. So after you've got all your tools together and you're ready to start the process, do yourself a favor. First things first, get yourself a decent set of Allen wrenches. Just because they're sized a lot closer, they don't have the play and slop that the little temp kits that come with the scooters do. And the lights themselves are specific to their location, so you can't intermittently use like a left front for a right front. And this is because the front lights and the rear lights are actually two different colors. So the front lights are actually white running lights, and they have this little kind of yellow LED pattern for the white light. And then the rear lights here have this white LED kind of pattern, and they're the ones that are actually red in color. So you can't just swap the right front for the left rear, that kind of stuff. They all have to be the same lights, which is why on Roadrunner's site, they sell each one of the light locations separately, like the right front, the right rear, etc. And there's also a little knockout here that you need to remove with a pair of pliers. And this basically just leaves room for the wiring that goes up to the stem here in the front. And before we did anything, after all the lights were removed and we were ready to put the new ones on, we actually are going to paint match them. And this is because the old ones and the new ones are not all exactly the same color black. They're slightly different shades, or lighter or darker, from each other. So we masked off the side red running lights and the front running bulbs, and then spray painted each one of them a nice satin black. And this really just added the uniformity to it and made it really match the other parts. Once everything is painted and you're ready to reassemble all the lights back onto the scooter, you might find some stragglers of the hot glue process that they put in the back. And this is great because it keeps them attached clearly, but you might need to do a little bit of cleanup here just to get these apart. But actually the connectors themselves were pretty easy to take apart. The hot glue is really only on the back of the connector where the wires go in. And this is just a durability thing. Actually, kudos to Roadrunner for doing that, and it just makes the overall connection a bit more robust. And you also might want to mark the connectors as to where they go for the lights, just so that one powers the actual red side light and one powers the front white light. Once all the connections are made and you've taped everything up, then you just need to remove the little notch here that makes room for the front wiring, and this just pulls apart its plastic. You might also want to file down just the ends, just to kind of clean them up and make it a little smoother on the wiring. Once you have the knockout removed and you're ready to mount the light, the tabs on the rear of it slide into this charge port area here, and they're just held in by these tabs, and then they're screwed in on the front. Well, what you'll find is that these tabs aren't really all that precise. There's a little bit of play in how they fit, so we had to clear out a little bit of extra material with the utility knife. This took just a second or two, but something to be aware of when you're mounting them up. They're not all exactly like a precise fit, so you might need to do a little bit of this just to get them to fit in the hole. Once you're ready to mount them, it might actually help to tape the wires to the inside of the light itself, kind of helps them stay put, and also to tape up that little hole there that goes into the deck that adds just a little bit more waterproofing to the overall scooter. And then from here, you're basically ready to screw the front bracket together. And one thing to note when you're assembling these don't need to be cranked down. This isn't metal on metal, it's metal on plastic. and you can snap these and crack them pretty easily. So they really just need to seat. Once you've got the front right side done, it's time to mount the left front lights. This is a pretty straightforward process, and it's the same white light color pattern. We don't need to remove the notch on this one because there's no wires that are coming from that area up into the stem. So we just need to make the regular connections, clean them up, and then tape them to the inside of the body just to help them stay put when we reassemble them. And again, when you're ready to screw these in place to the front brackets, you really want to make sure that you're not just over cranking these, because like I said, you can split these front little tabs that screw into the deck pretty easily. Once you're done with the front lights and you've reassembled everything and rewired everything, it's time to move on to the rear wires. There's a little bit of a difference between the back and the front, and that's because one of the leads off the lights actually goes to the rear brake light. And we want to make sure that that's connected as well. So this is where marking the wires really helps a lot. You'll notice on the new light, the wiring pattern's the same. So we're just going to disconnect the old light and make note of where that connector plugs into. It's really just one connection. You simply unplug it, and then the new light is going to plug into the same connector location, because on the rear, the running light and the red turn signal light actually kind of work in tandem. And we'll first remove the notch so that this makes, you know, the brake line and everything so that we can get through there. And then we'll reattach the rear connection to our one little bayonet connector here. And we'll make sure that that existing wire that runs up to the tail light is still intact there. And again, you might want to tape these up to the inside bottom of the tail light. This is just to make sure that nothing gets pinched and that everything has room and it seats properly against there. This is a pretty close quarter fit, so you'll find that if they do bunch up, it's a lot harder to get that back to seat properly. And then once they do and everything's lined up, you're ready to reassemble. And again, do not reef on these things, you'll regret it. Once you've got the right rear completely back together again and it's mounted back on the deck, it's time to move on to the left-hand side. We'll move our camera position over to the left in the back. And you can see here, it's the same basic idea. It's just the one connector, and that runs both the running light on the side and the rear turn signal light. So it's just the one connector. Once that's plugged back in, then we're ready to mount up the light itself. And again, sometimes taping these up to the inside of the light itself kind of helps keep things bunched up in the right spot. Just making sure that nothing gets pinched. And even after you have all the connectors and the tabs filed down and everything, and it's all snug and back together again, you might find there's still a little bit of space at the back of the bracket itself where the rear screw holes are. We actually had to put a couple of very thin washers between the bracket tabs and the deck just to make up that space so that we could finally screw it back together. Once all the connections had been made and all of the lights are remounted, it's time for a final light test. We'll power on the scoot and we'll check all of the lighting connections just to make sure that the rear brake assembly is actually working correctly and that the turn signals on both sides are responding correctly to our turn signal controls in our cockpit. And as we can see here, all the lights are working great. Roadrunner has always had a great lighting package, and having each one of those components painted really makes the overall look a lot sleeker because everything matches exactly. So as you can see, Roadrunner makes this a pretty straightforward process by making these products almost plug and play. So there's really not a ton to it, and just a few basic tools and, you know, an hour or two of your time, and you can easily swap these out. So if you've recently laid it down on one of your rides and you've really tore up one of these, thankfully it's not a super expensive fix and it's pretty easy to do. You know, it takes a little bit of your time and a little bit of your patience. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me, you guys. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the company as always. And if you've learned something or if this was helpful in any way, please hit the subscription and notification bells. It does help keep a young channel like this going and growing. Get outside, rip it up, have a great time. We'll catch you guys in the next video.